Hello, this is Rafael Gutierrez, and today I'm going to actually talk about the short punch that you can see in some versions of pinan shodan. That's the one I use. Is going to be the short punch. So that's what I'm going to use. Now, I use a tape which actually measures PSI, and it actually measures what's called peak force, which is how much force actually goes into it in the collision. Now, a lot of people will say, well, why am I using peak force instead of total force? Now, total force really doesn't matter that much when it comes to damage. For instance, let's take a baseball going 90 miles per hour. Baseball weighs about 0.15 kilograms. What is it? I can't remember how many grams a baseball weighs. And if it's going at 90 miles per hour, it has a certain amount of force. And when it hits you, all that force goes into you in the moment of the collision. And then that's it. It stops moving, right? Now, if we were to take let's say 1,000-pound car and have it go 1 mile per hour, it would actually have more force than the baseball. But the car would end up hitting you, and most of that force would be used to push you. It wouldn't actually, the moment of impact really wouldn't give you that much force directly. It would be the force would actually be prolonged. Now, some people say, well, yeah, but the car's more spread out, and so the force is spread out. Okay, so let's take a baseball and put it in front of a car going 1 mile per hour and have you stand there and get hit by the baseball as it's moving with the car 1 mile per hour. It's still going to have the force of the car, and it's going to be focused on one area, so it might be actually a little more damage. But at the end of the day, you're going to get hit with the baseball going 1 mile per hour, and your body's just going to be moved by it. And so what you end up seeing is the force is not what's causing the damage. It's actually the peak force. And so one thing people may ask is, well, why have a lot of really high budget programs always measured force? And the reason is force is more impressive. It's more impressive to, wow, look at how much force, rather than, well, this guy has very little force, but it all goes into the body and causes severe damage. So the speed of that the force was transferred is actually more important for damage than the total force. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use the peak force. I'm going to use this tape again. And one of the things I'm going to tell you is this. There are some people who will say, well, no, that's not the way I do it, so you're wrong. But I'm going to tell you there's something different about someone giving an opinion on something's wrong and someone giving data. Now, these pressure strips are actually available online. They're actually, I actually love it. They're $50 for a big strip like this. I've been using it with my school, with myself, and I haven't even gotten halfway done. I've been using this, trying different things, trying to see what can happen. I'm actually probably going to buy some for weapons to see how hard a bow really hits, because what I'm seeing is a lot of the data on this stuff before doesn't really give us proper information. And so, a lot of people may say, well, why was it done like this? Well, it was done like that because, I think in part it was more impressive to show certain things, and in part it was it was pretty much people not understanding what they were seeing. I mean, a lot of times with Hollywood especially, they're not really interested in facts. They're interested in sensationalism and getting their friends to show how great they are. And so, just a little different. Like I said, I'm using peak force. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare a straight punch just here to the short punch here. Now, I know that other martial arts have the same technique. They have a different name for it. If you could, please let me know what the technique is and what you call it, and why it's used and why it isn't. Now, I will tell you this. There are many people who are involved in sport karate, and short punches are not used in tournaments. They're not scored. The reason they're not scored has to do with the judge not being able to see it. It's not that it's not effective technique. And that's one of the big things that we actually can see when we start doing data, rather than, oh, well, how is this used in sport? Now, truth is, you will see some of the short punches you've seen in MMA and boxing. It may not be exactly the way we do it, but it is the same dynamic. Now, I have done a couple different things on how the force of stuff ends up occurring. Hold on a second. So, one of the things that happens is that short punches tends to be able to be used in different martial arts, and you can I actually have seen it can produce power. Now with this, we can see if it actually can produce as much power as a straight punch. Now, does it have to produce the same power to be effective? The answer is no, but I do want to see how much more power you would get from a straight punch than from a short punch, and so I'm going to do that again. I did put it in two different places. So with that, I'll stand up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the short punch here and make sure my knuckle goes in the right place. And here I'm actually going to do a straight punch based on on a strip that I've used before, so you can actually see two places where the straight punch would be. So here, straight, looks good. Here, the short punch. I'll do it again because it looks like I didn't hit the target. So here. Got the edge. Okay. So, one of the things I actually will tell you as I look at these two is this is the one that I use for my straight punch. You can see that it does have some pink in it. This one is the one I used for the short punch. You can again see that it did have the pink. Now, if you look at the intensity of it, it's about the same amount of intensity. And so I do want to actually use the straight line actually is probably I actually will use as artifact, so I will use the other things around it. So again, as always, I have to do calculations. Temperature. So right now, the temperature here is 17 Celsius and the humidity is 79%. So using our little low pressure thing, we are going to go with 17 and 7, so we're going to be using B. So I will use the numbers just to see. I remember the numbers for the punch being a little different, but we'll just use this. And what I'm seeing is I'm seeing at 1.3 in this chart when I'm actually measuring. Like I said, I actually am a really big fan of this because it is pretty simple. 1.3, so we go to 1.3 here to B, and it's still getting me a high amount of force. Actually about the same PSIs that I was getting with the other ones. Maybe the humidity is a little different than normal, but the color looked different. But what we're seeing is the PSIs for a short punch tend to actually be relatively high. So it actually is in the same range as the straight punch that I did last time. I'm not really giving you too much numbers because sometimes the numbers tend to, I guess the best way to say it is sometimes when people look at numbers, they tend to, rather than seeing the numbers, they tend to see a controversy. Well, I don't believe the numbers. Well, the numbers are actually high. They're actually the same level. I'm using the same technique to actually measure it. So what we see is a short punch is actually producing the same amount of punch as a straight punch. It doesn't matter if it's a straight punch or if it's a short punch. We actually develop roughly the same amount of force. Now, what I am going to do is I am eventually going to look at, actually one of the things I want to do is I want to look at not just a short and straight punch, but I'm going to eventually look at the short punch, the 1-inch punch. I get the feeling that in that one, the impulse is the moment of collision, the peak force is probably going to be a little less. If I'm wrong, that'd be great. That'd be amazing. And I'll do that next week. If you are doing short punches and you can get a lot of force, a lot of peak force, especially not pushing this, but hitting and causing the collision. If you're getting a lot of force when you actually, in the first instant of the collision with a 1-inch punch, please show me what you can do. Show me how much force, put a YouTube video to this. Let me see how you use a 1-inch punch. Now, I believe the 1-inch punch is really good for training, and it actually has a lot of benefits in that area. But I don't know. I haven't seen anyone who can produce a lot of force with a lot of peak force with the 1-inch punch. And I think it has to do with just how quick or how slow the punch really is. So hope you enjoyed this. If you did and you want to help support me, you can buy one of my couple books. I have the Serious and the Rarest Things, Off the Rails, and I do have the Breaking Points. I'm also in the process of finishing up my anatomy book, so people who are interested in understanding the anatomy and understanding what's going on would be able to do that. Well, hope you enjoyed this and have a nice day.